There are certain moments in life when someone walks into your world, and suddenly nothing feels like a coincidence anymore. You can try to trace things back and figure out how it all happened, but deep inside, some part of you already knows that logic was never really in charge. This person did not simply show up, they arrived carrying something, and the moment they did, something inside you shifted quietly in a way that felt permanent. Even now, while you are trying to move forward, while telling yourself it is over, while trying to think your way through the pain, something keeps pulling your attention back to them, not out of desperation, but because of something that feels strangely familiar and heavy at the same time. If these words have found you today, that is not an accident. Important messages tend to arrive when a person is finally ready to hear them. Something deep inside you is waking up right now. It is a kind of inner knowing that refuses to stay quiet. A feeling that keeps insisting this connection was never meant to be forgotten so easily. You may have reached a point where you feel split in two, stuck between holding on and finally letting go, torn between trusting what your heart feels and doubting yourself because of what your eyes can actually see. Silence has a way of feeding uncertainty. Distance can make even the strongest heart start questioning what it already knows to be true. You may have asked yourself whether you imagined everything, whether you gave too much meaning to something that was never really there. But here is what matters. If it were only imagination, it would have faded by now. Illusions weaken when time tests them. What you feel did not weaken. Your heart still refuses to fully release this person. And that resistance exists for a reason. Time did not wash it away. Pain did not destroy it. Every attempt to walk away somehow brings you back to the same quiet truth. This person matters, not in the way the ego demands, but in the way something deeper inside you recognizes. Stay with me here, because what comes next might change the way you see everything. This is not obsession. Obsession is loud, impatient, and consuming. What you feel is quieter, much deeper. It exists beneath the surface of your everyday thoughts. It waits patiently. It rises during still moments, in dreams, in unexpected waves of emotion that arrive without warning. It carries the feeling of something unfinished. When you first encountered this person, something old stirred inside you. It was not just attraction. It was not simply two people being compatible on paper. It felt like familiarity without memory, as if some part of you had already known them, long before this life brought you together. The conversation may have seemed ordinary, but the energy was not. Your entire being recognized something that felt safe and intense all at once. That combination is rare, and once you experience it, it leaves a permanent mark. One of the great thinkers on human nature once wrote that when two people truly meet, both are changed. You were changed by this connection. And whether they fully understand it or not, they were changed as well. Connections that truly move us are never shallow. They rearrange something on the inside. They open emotional doors that can never completely close again. Even now, despite the distance and the silence, they feel your presence far more deeply than they are showing. Some people carry enormous feelings inside while appearing completely calm on the surface. Silence does not always mean feelings disappeared. Sometimes it means the feelings became too overwhelming to understand. Your presence awakened something inside them that they were not prepared to face. Instead of leaning into it, they stepped back. They hoped that distance would quiet whatever had been stirred inside them, but it did not. Energy does not need words to travel. During their quiet moments, when distractions disappear and the noise of daily life fades, you rise to the surface of their mind again, not because they consciously choose it, but because the connection itself demands attention. They replay old conversations. They remember what it felt like to be truly understood by you. They notice the difference between how alive they felt around you and how emotionally flat everything else now seems. That comparison unsettles them deeply. They are not distant because they feel nothing. They are distant because they feel too much. Do not stop watching. The next part reveals what is really happening beneath their silence. There are battles happening inside them that were never yours to carry. Old emotional wounds, fear of vulnerability, fear of losing control. fear of being truly seen at a level they have spent years hiding from. For some people, love itself does not feel safe, not because of the other person, but because of everything love forces them to confront within themselves. This is where many deep connections begin to fracture. One soul wakes up faster while the other pulls away from the mirror being held in front of them. You became that mirror. You reflected parts of them they had buried long ago, and instead of running directly from you, they retreated from themselves. One of the most important truths about human nature is this: until a person makes their hidden feelings conscious, those feelings will quietly run their life. Right now, they are still being guided by parts of themselves they have not yet faced honestly. But once something inside a person wakes up, it can never fully go back to sleep. You cannot unsee what has already been revealed. You cannot unknow what your soul already understands. You entered their life to remind them of emotional truth, tenderness, and what it feels like to be real with another human being. You reached a place inside them that had been quiet for a very long time. That kind of emotional impact does not simply disappear. It lingers. It reshapes people slowly from the inside. The universe rarely wastes meaningful encounters. If this connection were truly finished, it would have ended cleanly and quietly. Instead, it keeps appearing through small signs that catch your attention when you least expect them, through dreams that feel strangely real, through moments where their name enters your thoughts without any effort. These are not meaningless distractions. They are reminders, not reminders to chase, but reminders to trust the process that is already unfolding beyond what you can currently see. There is a difference between forcing a door open and simply knowing it will open. When the timing is right, that door will open on its own. Keep watching, because what is shifting behind the scenes will surprise you. Your exhaustion right now is completely understandable. Caring deeply for someone while receiving almost no clarity is one of the heaviest emotional experiences a person can carry. But your hope is not weakness, it is intuition. And intuition does not scream for attention, it waits quietly. Beneath the surface, something is already moving, not visibly yet. But internally, resistance is softening, fear is being quietly challenged. The heart that once closed itself off is slowly starting to surrender beneath the pressure of its own truth. Whether they openly admit it or not, the thought of losing you completely is beginning to feel more frightening than the idea of trying again. This is not the ending of the story. It is the pause before understanding, the space where real growth begins to take shape, the silence where alignment quietly prepares itself. You are not being asked to wait without a reason. You are being asked to stay grounded within yourself, to remain emotionally open without abandoning your own inner balance. As these words settle inside you, something important becomes clear. Real patience is not passive, it is steady. It is rooted in self-respect. It trusts timing without sacrificing dignity. It understands that genuine connections never need to be forced. What you are carrying right now is not simply longing. It is the beginning of a deeper wisdom, the kind that only comes from walking through something that cannot be reasoned away. The connection is not broken, it is changing form, and through this transformation, both of you are evolving. That is something the mind often resists because the mind constantly needs answers, labels, and timelines. But something deeper than the mind operates differently. It uses uncertainty as a kind of refinement. It strips away illusions, false expectations, and emotional dependency until only what is genuine remains. What you are living through right now is not merely waiting, it is becoming. And that becoming is the point. Watch closely, because the next part explains what has actually been happening to you this entire time. You may have already noticed that since this person entered your life, you are no longer the same version of yourself that existed before. Your emotional awareness has deepened. Your standards have become clearer. You can no longer settle for shallow love or connections that only halfway show up for you. Something inside you now refuses anything less than what feels real, safe, and emotionally honest. That is not accidental. This connection awakened parts of you that had been sleeping for years. It forced you to look inward. It revealed your fears, your patterns, your emotional needs, and even hidden strengths you did not know you had. Sometimes the deepest purpose of a connection is not simply romance. Sometimes it is transformation. Some people enter your life not only to love you but to wake you up into becoming more honest with yourself. They trigger growth that comfort never could. And even when the journey becomes painful, the awakening itself still carries meaning. You may not fully understand yet why everything unfolded the way it did. But understanding is coming. Stay with this. You may still question why two people can feel something so powerful and yet struggle to align at the same pace. But souls rarely grow in perfectly synchronized timing. One person often wakes up before the other. One person becomes emotionally ready, while the other is still fighting fear internally. That does not automatically erase the connection. It simply means growth is still taking place beneath the surface. Real emotional change is rarely dramatic in the beginning. It happens quietly, slowly, through reflection, through loneliness, through realization, and eventually through truth. There are moments when people pull away because being deeply loved exposes everything they have avoided within themselves. Being truly seen can feel terrifying to someone who spent years hiding emotionally. Your presence may have forced them to confront wounds they did not even realize were still controlling them. And while physical distance may exist, emotional distance does not always mean spiritual separation. Some connections continue teaching both people even while apart. Every lesson, every silence, every moment of longing carries something meant to shape both souls involved. The important thing now is not losing yourself inside the uncertainty. Deep love should never require abandoning who you are. You are allowed to care deeply while still protecting your peace. You are allowed to remain open while also honoring your worth. Something deeper inside you recognizes truth differently than the thinking mind does. The thinking mind demands certainty immediately, but something wiser understands timing. The thinking mind fears silence, but something deeper listens beneath it. The thinking mind clings desperately, but something wiser learns how to trust without needing to control the outcome. Right now, your most important task is not chasing answers endlessly. Your task is to keep becoming the strongest, clearest, and most emotionally grounded version of yourself. Because regardless of how this connection ultimately unfolds, you are already changing because of it. You are learning that love is not only about attachment, it is also about growth, honesty, self-awareness, and emotional courage. This next part is where everything starts to make sense in a completely different way. You are learning the difference between forcing outcomes and allowing life to unfold naturally. You are learning that genuine connections leave lasting marks because they touch places within us that ordinary experiences never reach. And perhaps the most important realization of all is this: what is truly meant for you will never require you to betray yourself in order to keep it. Real love does not ask you to shrink. It does not demand that you abandon your dignity, silence your inner knowing, or ignore your emotional truth. If this connection is real, it will continue moving in the direction it was always meant to. And if it is still unfinished, life itself has a way of bringing unfinished things back into focus at exactly the right moment. Until then, trust the transformation taking place within you. Trust the emotional clarity you are gaining. Trust the deeper understanding being formed through all of this uncertainty. Because sometimes something inside us recognizes meaning long before the mind can explain it. That is the mark left behind by a connection that reaches the level of the soul. Sometimes a connection does not arrive to stay immediately. Sometimes it enters your life to wake you up first, to show you what is truly possible, to reveal what your heart genuinely needs, instead of what it was conditioned to settle for. And once that kind of awakening happens, you cannot simply return to who you were before. Even when the person is physically absent, the truth they awakened inside you continues to live and breathe. This is why letting go feels so difficult right now. Not because you are simply attached to a person, but because you are holding on to a truth about yourself that was born through knowing them. You discovered how deeply you are capable of feeling. You learned how open your heart can truly become. You realized how fully present you can be emotionally when something genuine touches you, and something that deep does not abandon its own evolution once it begins. Stay right here, because what comes next will either confirm what your heart already knows, or finally give you the clarity you have been searching for. You may also notice moments of doubt appearing unexpectedly. Thoughts like, if this were real, would it not be easier? If they truly cared, would they not show it more clearly? These questions are natural, but they come from the thinking mind trying to measure something that does not always move according to logic. Soul-level connections rarely travel in straight lines. They spiral inward. They return to the same emotional themes at deeper levels each time, asking for greater honesty, more courage, and a stronger willingness to face the truth. What makes this connection feel complicated is not the absence of feeling, it is the difference in timing and emotional readiness. You are prepared to open your heart, they are still navigating their own resistance, and readiness is not something one person can simply hand to another. It has to be earned through inner confrontation, through facing fears that may have been avoided for years, through choosing vulnerability instead of emotional self-protection. There are moments when they almost reach out, moments when your name sits heavily in their thoughts, moments when they hold their phone in silence, trying to decide what they would even say to you, but then fear interrupts. Fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of not being enough, fear of reopening emotions they do not yet trust themselves to handle. So they stay silent, hoping that time alone will repair what only genuine courage can actually fix. Yet time keeps bringing you back into their awareness again and again. Because unresolved emotional connections do not simply disappear, they wait quietly beneath the surface. They rise when distractions fade, late at night, early in the morning, during empty conversations, inside relationships that feel emotionally hollow. You become the quiet standard they unconsciously compare everything else against. This is also why signs seem to keep appearing for you lately, not to trap you in the past, but to keep you anchored in trust. When doubt begins creeping in, something arrives to remind you that what you felt was not imaginary. A song suddenly speaks directly to your situation. A dream creates a moment of unexpected clarity. A memory returns carrying warmth instead of pain. These moments are not pulling you backward. They are anchoring you into deeper understanding. Trust does not mean suffering endlessly while waiting. It means staying connected to yourself, while allowing what is truly meant for you to find its natural way back. There is a quiet but powerful transformation happening within you right now. You are beginning to understand the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment says, I need this person in order to feel whole. Alignment says, I am already whole, and what is truly meant for me will meet me honestly. That shift may sound small, but internally, it changes everything. It is the moment when pain begins transforming into wisdom. When you stop chasing clarity and begin embodying it, the entire dynamic starts to shift. Something softens, the emotional pressure lifts. The connection is no longer fueled by anxiety or fear, but by grounded emotional presence. And that is exactly the state where something genuine becomes possible again. Because if they returned while you were emotionally exhausted, doubting yourself, and making yourself smaller just to keep the connection alive, the same unhealthy patterns would simply repeat. But if they return while you are centered, emotionally steady, and rooted in your own worth, then something genuinely new can begin, something healthier, something more balanced, something mutual. You are not being punished by the delay, you are being prepared through it, prepared to receive love without abandoning yourself in the process, prepared to recognize genuine effort instead of chasing empty potential, prepared to meet them not as someone desperate for validation, but as someone standing fully in their own worth. They feel this shift happening inside you. Even if they cannot explain it logically, they sense that you are pulling your energy inward instead of anxiously reaching outward. They sense that you are no longer waiting in the same way as before. And strangely, that change makes the connection feel even more real to them, because now it is no longer something guaranteed. It has become something that must be consciously chosen. This is the point where fear slowly begins losing its control, because the real possibility of losing you completely becomes undeniable, and reality has a way of cutting straight through emotional avoidance. The heart begins speaking louder than old defense mechanisms. Memories soften, regret quietly surfaces. The desire to make things right slowly grows stronger. You may notice moments of sudden calm appearing within yourself, almost as if you have emotionally stepped back, followed by unexpected waves of feeling returning. That is alignment beginning to settle. You are no longer fighting the connection, but you are also no longer drowning inside it. You are allowing it to exist without obsessively controlling where it leads. That kind of emotional balance carries real power. It signals that you are finally ready for truth in whatever form it arrives. The path between you is not blocked forever. It is being cleared. Old misunderstandings are dissolving. Emotional walls are weakening. What once felt chaotic is quietly reorganizing itself beneath the surface. There is nothing to force right now. No convincing, no over-explaining, no proving your worth. Simply remain present within yourself. Stay emotionally honest. Stay open without chasing. The rest is unfolding according to its own timing. And as this stage continues, you may begin feeling the connection differently, not as painful longing anymore, but as a quiet certainty, a knowing that no longer begs for reassurance, a trust that does not constantly need confirmation. Something is moving toward alignment, not rushed, not forced, but real. There comes a moment when longing slowly softens into understanding, not because the connection disappears, but because your relationship to it changes completely. You stop asking, why is this happening to me, and begin realizing this is happening for me. That shift may seem small on the surface, but internally it changes everything. It is the moment when pain begins transforming into wisdom. You are starting to understand that this connection was never meant to consume your identity. It was meant to reveal you, to strip away what was false, to show you where you had been abandoning yourself emotionally, to teach you the difference between intensity and genuine intimacy, between holding on through fear and remaining through authentic love. That is the real gift hidden inside all of this. Not just the connection itself, but who you are becoming through it. And that version of you, the one being shaped right now through all of this uncertainty and longing and quiet courage, that is the version of you that real love will finally be able to meet. And that meeting, when it finally arrives, will not feel desperate or rushed. It will feel like exhaling after holding your breath for a very long time. It will feel like arriving somewhere you were always meant to be. Not because you chased it endlessly, but because you stayed true to yourself long enough for it to find you. That is the part most people miss. They believe that love must be pursued aggressively, demanded loudly, or proven through constant effort. But the deepest connections do not work that way. They respond to stillness. They move toward authenticity. They are drawn to someone who has done the inner work and no longer needs the connection to define their worth. That is exactly where you are heading right now, whether you fully recognize it or not. Every difficult day you have moved through, every moment of silence you have survived, every time you chose to keep going instead of collapsing into bitterness, you were building something inside yourself that cannot be taken away. You were developing a kind of emotional strength that most people spend their entire lives searching for and never find. There is something else worth understanding at this point. The version of them that stepped back, the version that chose distance over honesty, that is not necessarily the final version of who they are. People are not fixed, they change, they grow, they reach moments where the weight of their own avoidance becomes heavier than the fear of facing the truth. And when that moment arrives for them, everything shifts. The walls they built start feeling less like protection and more like a prison. The silence they chose starts feeling less like safety and more like loss. That is the turning point. And for many people who have pulled away from something genuinely meaningful, that turning point arrives quietly and unexpectedly, often when they least anticipate it. You do not need to engineer that moment. You do not need to force it into existence. Your only responsibility right now is to remain so grounded in your own life, so present within yourself, so genuinely at peace with where you are, that when that moment does arrive for them, you are someone worth returning to honestly. This is also the time to stop measuring your progress by their actions. Your healing, your growth, your emotional evolution should never be dependent on what they choose to do next. You are on your own journey, and that journey has value completely independent of how this connection ultimately resolves. The clarity you are gaining belongs to you. The self-awareness you are developing belongs to you. The emotional depth you are discovering within yourself belongs entirely to you. No outcome can take that away. No silence, no distance, no uncertainty can erase what you have learned about yourself through all of this. That is yours permanently, and carrying that truth forward into every relationship and every interaction that comes next will change the quality of your entire life. Not just this one connection, but everything that follows. So as you move through the coming days, hold on to this. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not asking for something unreasonable by wanting a love that is honest, consistent, and genuinely present. What you feel is not weakness, it is depth, and depth is rare. In a world full of surface-level interactions and emotional shortcuts, someone who is willing to feel this fully, to sit inside uncertainty without becoming cruel or cold, to keep their heart open even when it hurts, that person is extraordinary. You are that person, and what is truly meant for you will recognize that. It will not ask you to hide it. It will not punish you for it. It will meet it honestly and completely. Until that moment arrives, keep going, not because the outcome is guaranteed, but because you are worth every step of this journey, regardless of where it leads.